Hi, we're in Charleston right now for Ogiercon because Origins of the Wheel of Time by Michael Livingston is being released today. It got released today.
It did.
And we attended a talk by Michael Livingston last night all about the Origins of the Wheel of Time, and that is what this video is.
Yeah.
But before that, you got a book there.
I did. I didn't have a book yet. I was going to buy one at the signing later tonight. And Michael went around and said to everyone, "Where does everyone come from?" And people were like, "Where is it? Who's come the furthest?" And people instantly just pointed to me, and I was like, "The UK?" And he's just like, "Really? Okay." And then we went around, and I'd come from the furthest. So he was like, "Okay, you've come the furthest for the lecture tonight," which is weird, but
really far.
Okay. You're getting a free book. So I got a free book, The Wheel of Time Origins. Coincidentally, it is the British edition.
Odd, very odd.
I was the only British guy there, and I got the British edition of the book, which I was not going to get because I'm buying the American copy. So
here we go.
There we go.
There we go.
And then he's like, he signed it for me, signed it on the inside,
That's so cool.
and it says, "For the man who came from Manchester," and then he signed it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's pretty sick. I've read exactly 0 of it so far because we've had a busy day. So
we did have a very busy day. We attended a little garden tour at the Creators Gardens. We got to see Harriet and Maria.
Right.
And you'll see more of that on later videos. And you know what? We didn't have you introduce yourself. Why don't you tell the world who you are?
Oh yeah. Hi, I'm Rob. I run the Malkid Talks YouTube channel. You find me there doing sometimes food videos. I haven't done those in a long time, but it's been a minute. But yeah, 3-4 Talks the big one. Daily Vale News, some live streams, just a lot of fun stuff. And you know, jokes on Twitter. That's the other thing I'm known for.
Oh yeah, the Tam jokes.
The Tam jokes on Twitter. So
excellent. And I'm Critter XD. You're on my channel, so I'm gonna assume
I mean,
that you know that.
Yeah, you've got problems if you don't know where you are, folks. Come on.
What's been your favorite part of the trip so far?
Oh man, sitting at RJ's desk.
Yeah,
that was super cool. Especially because we almost didn't do it.
I know.
And then he was like, "Any more pictures? Any more pictures? Any more pictures?" And we were like, I literally said to Anna, I was like, "I feel like I want to ask, can I sit at the desk?" Not knowing it's RJ's chair.
Yeah,
I didn't know that at the
I
time.
didn't either.
I missed that when he explained it. And then someone was just like, "Can I sit in the chair?" I don't know who it was.
It was
Did
me.
you say? Okay.
It was
Thank you.
100% me.
Yeah.
I was about to leave and I was like, I am never going to get this chance again. So I'm going to ask. And then we all got to sit in the chair.
And we all got
take
to sit in the
photos.
chair. Absolutely, yeah. So
That was really fun.
that was incredible. Yeah, I mean, the whole trip's been amazing, but that's probably the highlight so far.
Yeah.
So
So if you're unaware, Ogiercon is 14 fans of the Wheel of Time at an Airbnb that is Black-Ajah house adjacent at the very least. There was even a black cat here yesterday.
yes, there's 9 bees on the ceiling in the kitchen.
There are 9 bees on the ceiling in the kitchen, so this place is absurd. It's so fun.
Yeah.
We're having a great time, and we went and saw Ogier Street today.
Yes.
And as you'll see in just a moment, the Michael Livingston lecture is part of the trip, and now I'm going to share it with you. So please enjoy.
It was a lot of fun.
I had the pleasure of hanging out with Dr. Livingston this afternoon for lunch and picked his brain a little bit about several things, one of which was Wheel of Time, of course. It was a lot of fun, and there was a great conversation, and at the end of it, I got to touch all kinds of fun little toys from College of Charleston, which hopefully you will all get to spend some time with without taking photography. Anyway, today we are here to talk about Origins of the Wheel of Time by Dr.
Killing me, Smalls. Thank you all for coming. So I know this was very last minute that we did not know if we were going to be able to get these objects. That was like the reason it was kind of like a last minute thing to do this. And yes, you can video. Hello, people at home, apparently, and around the world, whatever you're doing. So thank you all for coming. Not everybody here, I know some of you know a little something about Jordan.
Yeah, tiny.
Here,
A little
like- But for those who don't, I figured I'd talk a little bit about like who Jordan was, why he was important, and that sort of stuff. Give you a little bit of background, and then I want to introduce like why these objects like what's cool about them. I mean, these were like, these are the ones I wanted to bring. These are the ones that I thought were the most awesome pieces. And so like talk about why those are, what's important about them, and then give people a chance to come up and look at them. Again, you can't take photos of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, please. And man, some of you came from a long way away. Who came from the furthest?
I came from the
UK.
From the UK?
Yes.
You came from England for this?
I did, yes.
Where in England?
Manchester.
In Manchester?
Yes.
Can anybody beat Manchester?
Chicago.
Chicago. Has it beat for pizza? Not for distance.
New York would do it.
You thought New York would do it. No,
I came from New York.
you came from New York. Boston?
St. Louis.
St. Louis?
Seattle.
DC, Seattle. Holy.
Oh, Seattle's far.
Oh my God. You're from San Francisco. Two streets over? Yeah. Dude, like, hell of a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
A lot of exercise.
might have, like, he flew. You walked.
I
That's
just sat down the whole time. Yeah.
well done. So if you don't know, the guy we call Robert Jordan, that was a pen name. He was born James Oliver Rigney Jr. In 1948 here in Charleston, and grew up, spent most of his life here in the Charleston area. He moved to Johns Island when he was a young man. Grew up fairly poor. Didn't like to talk about it, but grew up poor, as he used to say. Self-taught to read. This is somebody who, in the situation he was growing up, didn't have a lot of educational opportunities. Just taught himself to read. Taught himself to read using the wrong books. You're supposed to read Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss. He read the classics instead. He would steal into the adult section when a librarian wasn't looking and take those books, and that's how he taught himself to read. So he kind of cut his teeth on the classics, which is pretty cool, I think, as a member of the humanities. Go team. So he's really bright. I mean, just naturally bright. One of these annoying people who doesn't have to study. And he's also a really good athlete. Built like a linebacker, big guy. And he's really bright, so he does very well in sports, does very well in school, and gets a scholarship offer to play for Clemson, football. Awesome, right? He's going to play for Clemson. And he goes, and look, I don't know exactly how good he was on the football field. He sucked in the classroom, and it's by his own admission. And he says, because look, I'd never had to try. Right? You know, when you're naturally sort of gifted and you're not necessarily going to the brightest of schools or wherever, you just succeed, just period, right? And so this idea that he was having to work for it, are you kidding? Study, what even is that? And so it was a little bit difficult. And meanwhile, Vietnam is going on. And he came from a family that had been a family of service. Generation after generation, the men went and fought. Whatever fighting was to be done, they went. And he talked a lot about his father's service, when his father's service had meant to him. And I talk about that some in the book because I quote the eulogy that Jim wrote after his dad's passing, which is an incredibly moving eulogy. But he talks in there about what his father's service had meant to him. So he decides, I gotta do it too. Drops out of school, enlists in the Army. Go and fight in Vietnam. Now again, he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. And so the military's like, we can use you. You don't go to the front. You sit at this desk and you get things where they need to go because you're smart, right? So you get the paperwork done, which is important work. Logistics is important work, incredibly vital, to any warfare, to have the material, the men where they need to be, all that stuff. He's good at that. Fantastic. It's not what he wants to do. He wanted to come and fight. And they got him pushing paper? No. So, because he's a smart guy, he manages to, I'm trying to think how to say this correctly, get orders the way he wanted them that would send him out of that job. So, I'm not sure the legality of that, but he got the orders to not be in that job and to be transferred to an assault helicopter squadron. And so he becomes one of the top tigers. Gets assigned to be a helicopter gunman. He's the man at the door of the helicopter on the Modus or whatever they happen to have mounted at that point. You've seen the movies, right? When the chopper comes in, the guy at the door on the big gun, that's him. Not a likelihood of a long lifespan, typically. This is not a particularly safe job by any means, but he's very good at it. He's very good at it. He didn't like talking about it. He won multiple awards for his valor. He did his job, we'll say. He did his duty. Comes home to Charleston. And I gotta go back to school now. And he decides to come here. So he comes here as a veteran student, comes to the Citadel, which is kind of where the stories all sort of start to interconnect. Why this place? And so especially once you start reading the book, when it comes out tomorrow, though I know some of you have gotten copies early. I've been seeing this on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. And checked on video with you, actually. Now that I've met you. I got one. Because Barnes & Noble was putting them out earlier or something like that, and y'all were like scouring. And then posting it. Like, Barnes & Noble, they're going to get in trouble. Good on you. Good on you. What is that? They're out of Waterston, so you can go. So he comes here and does terrific. He's not like he's matured up, no problem. Gets a job in the engineering program in physics. I met him once, and it was actually right outside that door. I'd started a creative writing award for him. My first year here, I was thrown the creative writing journal that we have, the Shako, and they said, do something. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, well, nobody writes. Cadets don't write for it. And I said, well, we have two famous alumni, Pat Conroy and Robert Jordan. I should start some creative writing awards and put their name on it. Maybe the cadets will like that. And so I wrote them both cold. I'm like, hey, I'm a professor. You want a name on an award? They both wrote back. They were both amazing. Pat, this is when, I don't know if you know Pat Conroy and the history of that, but it's sort of a little sketchy. He was persona non grata. Nobody would speak to him. And he was like, wow, you're from the Citadel, you're talking to me. I'm like, I don't know anything. You're famous and you're from here. There's a backstory? He's like, oh my God, yeah. It's the whole thing. We had a great, he was awesome. He was awesome. And James Oliver Rigby Jr., Robert Jordan, was also amazing. So when I gave out the first awards, right out there, I'd invited them both on the assumption there's no way in hell they're going to show up. Right, so I wasn't prepared for anybody to show up. And Jim at that point was already sick. He didn't have that much longer. And he came. And I had a script I had to read that included, because the English department had given a lot of support to this. If you're interested in writing, you should, talk to us about the English major. So I read my script. Jordan, who was sitting like right there, was like, I'll have you know I was not an English major. And I'm like, yeah, and you sold 44 million copies. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. It was great. We got along fantastic. It was good. It was great. The one time I met him, he was a little bit mad at me. So he came here. He does extremely well, gets his degree, goes off, and actually gets a job at the Charleston Naval Shipyards, which are north of here. Gets a job as a nuclear engineer working on subs. And in the course of his duties there, has a physical accident and wrecks his knee. Like football, like the bad injury, you know what I mean? Like where you're like, this might be a career ender, like that kind of thing. Rips out his knee. In the course of going to the hospital for that, has a lung clot. Nearly basically kills him on the operating table. Like it's bad. This is the reason you've seen pictures of him. He has a cane. That's why. That cane is in a display case that is about, 50 feet that way?
Yep.
So afterwards, if you want to go check that out, there's a display case in there that has his hat, his cane, pictures when he was here,
Harriet sword.
and the heron mark sword, all kinds of awesome stuff is in a permanent display case right over there. Anyway, it's so crazy being here, I can't believe. So he does this, he tears out his knee, he's in the hospital, and he starts reading books, and he thinks these books suck. These books are awful. I could do better. So, all right, let me do better. And so he writes a book, and it's not very good. But it proves to himself, I can write a book. And meanwhile, he meets a young woman here in town, Harriet McDougal. If you can, come to the book signing tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Barnes & Noble in West Ashley. Harriet is going to be there signing books. I'll also be there signing books, but mostly Harriet will be there. sign copies of my books, so you want to get her signature, and I'll do it too. And Maria Simmons will also be there, who was Jim's assistant for all these years, and so kind of getting all three of us there. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. I'm really excited. Anytime you get to see Harriet is an awesome time. They meet. They fall in love eventually after he writes a couple novels for her, all under pen names. He never wrote anything under his own name. He said that he was the only story that he would tell under his own name was his own. Someday I will write a book about what I experienced in Vietnam. That will go under my name. Nothing else will. Unfortunately, that book never got written. Fortunately, it didn't get written because that happened. The Wheel of Time happened, which nobody expected, him least of all. He signed the original book contract. Well, it originally was like, I think it's going to be 3 books. He had written these Conan the Barbarian books, and I don't know if you read them. They're great fun. They're just fun. And so they're like, this guy can write. He can write fantasies. That's great. That's awesome. And we just got rights to the Conan the Barbarian series, and we need somebody to write a book by like next month. Do we know anybody who can write that fast and do a complete story? And Harriet's like, yeah, my husband can. And so they do the Conan books. So he can do this. It's great. And Tor, his publisher, by Tom Doherty. Tom Doherty says, hey, look, I think you can do something bigger. Something your own. Not Conan, not like, an existing property. Do your own property, your own fantasy series. See what you can come up with. And Jim says, sure, I bet I can come up with 3 books. And starts thinking about it and puts together a basic working of what he's going to do. And goes to Tom and says, all right, I got an idea. I'm thinking it's not going to be 3 books. Maybe 4. And Tom Doherty said, well, you write a little bit long, so I think it's going to be 5. How about if we sign a contract for 6, though? Wiggle room. Plenty of wiggle room. No problem. And then at that point, he really starts writing this thing. Now, that kind of work up to that of writing that first book, I'm not going to hold it. You can come look at it after. I'm not going to hold it up because this right here. This first thing, I'm going to do these in order. People have asked me, like, what shocked me the most when I got into the archives? Because in the end of all this, I ended up writing this book, and I got access to the archives, and the archives are down at the College of Charleston. They're awesome. The reading papers. There are additional papers that aren't on display there, but this was in the public stuff. This is the most awesome piece of paper in the entire collection. This yellow one here. This is the one I didn't think possibly existed because it's a smoking gun for what he was doing at the start. It is the earliest piece of paper that I can positively identify as being part of the Wheel of Time. This is the earliest scrap of the thing that led to, what is it now, 90 million copies that have been sold? A lot. It all basically starts with this piece of paper. Because what he starts doing at the beginning is he says, I'm going to make a new Arthurian story. Not just King Arthur. It's going to be other stuff too, but at the heart of it is going to be King Arthur. and that's his scrap of paper figuring out who's who. So that's where you're going to see who Nynaeve is, who Moraine is, where the word Amerlin comes from, who Rhys Althor is. It's Rhys Althor, not Rand Althor at the beginning. This takes a long time for him to get ready to write. He writes very carefully and in succeeding drafts. It's very interesting to look through all of his materials because he wrote so many drafts to get to something he was willing to share with anybody. He always kind of joked that he goes through dozens of drafts before he would allow Harriet to look at anything. And I always thought that was a funny joke. No, it's not a joke. That's how he worked. And we have chunks of this, huge chunks of it, in the archives. And it is really interesting to be able to look through, man, every little word that he's changing. He ultimately writes, of course, a few more books than the 5. They keep going. They keep going. Of course, the first one comes out in 1990, that's Eye of the World. In 2005, he turns in book 11, Knife of Dreams. And he's exhausted. He's physically exhausted. He's been writing, kind of like at a breakneck pace. Absolutely exhausted. I think he just needs a rest. Obviously, it turns out he does not need just rest. He is ill with amyloidosis. It's a fatal illness. When he's diagnosed, the median life expectancy with high treatment is 4 years. He unfortunately did not have that long, as we all know, and died in 2007. And then Harriet had the difficult chance of trying to select who's going to take over from this point. Of course, it was Munko. She chose Brandon Sanderson, who did a marvelous job in finishing off what was supposed to be one more book, and ended up being 3. And I talk about this in the book. Brandon wanted it to be 1. He was like, damn it, he said it was going to be 1. And they're like, and Tor kept saying, but how long is it? And he's like, it's long. It's like a smidge, that's long, you know? And at a certain point, they're like, we can't publish that. Like, the book will not hold together. Like, I'm sorry, Brandon. We have to be, it's just going to be 1 volume. Like, we don't care. Like, physics is physics. Like, come on. We can't, what are we going to make it out of metal? And he's like, well, maybe. No. No. So he had to break up. So it ends up being 3 books. So the entire series is 14 novels, a prequel, and it amounts to, what, 4.2 million words? Somebody here showed.
4.4.
4.4. 4.4. I knew somebody would know it. 4.4 million words, which is a lot of words. And they all start with that piece of paper. So that's the starter. Now, this next piece of paper is the only paper in the early bits of the archives that is datable. This was a tremendous problem for me when I was asked to do the Origins of the Time book, Origins of the Wheel of Time book. Also, the Origins of the Time, that'd be an interesting book. Step off, Stephen Hawking.
Interesting choice of words.
So, nothing had dates on it, which was enormously frustrating because of all this early stuff, and it was just kind of, he just had it like in piles. And so there's these boxes, like this box over here. That's what the archive boxes kind of look like. It's just archival boxes. It's just like, here's a bunch of paper. What is it? We don't know. So it's Eye of the World-ish. And so I had to try and make an organization. I made a spreadsheet, as my wife knows. I like spreadsheets. Just kidding. Gives me hell all the time.
There are some spreadsheets.
First and only time anybody's ever going to clap for spreadsheets. Spreadsheets. Woo! Tell me about Excel again. All right. Calm down. A1 to B3. You do the math. So there was a date. This one has a date. This is 1987 when he printed this out. June 1st, 1987. Has a date. And what it is a name list. He loved making name lists and then trying to use those to spur his imagination. And he had reams of these things. When I went in at first, I was like, I know he does these name lists. I think it'd be cool to have like an appendix of like the names that he had on his list. And I started, I got through like 3 pages of like, oh, what am I doing? This is a book itself. What am I doing? This is crazy. There are more words, if you don't know, there are more words in the notes than there are in the wheel of time. So there's 4.4 in the wheel of time. I don't know what the count is, but it's way more. It's a lot more. It breaks my computer every time I try and count the file. So it's a lot of words. But this is the first page that's on display here of names and people. He has marked in here that these ones are of Arthurian origin, which is neat that he was still kind of captivated by this. And you'll see in here the first appearance of Tom Maryland is on here. He had printed this out and then was thinking to himself and thought of this Tom Maryland character, and so he hand wrote it in. Oh, he goes in here, and added that into the list. So you'll see Tom Maryland there, and you'll see other little notes of people. You're like, that sounds a little bit like so-and-so. Yeah. He was figuring out how he was going to spell stuff, and was still working on that. And this is, I'm going to show it in horizontal. You can see it's a very thick file. All right, that is one bundle of name list of many. There were many of these. I'll also say, it says something about I was like, I feel you, Jim. Most of you were too young, but some of you are not too young to remember when we were captivated by different fonts. Do you remember we had the fire font? And it was like, oh, the fire, it looks like the words are on fire. Yeah, there was a moment in our sad history as a species in which we were like, oh my God, I put it in crackling font. He went through that phase too. One of the lists, not that one, but one of the printouts he made of these lists, he was like doing different fonts for the different names and stuff. Oh, this is great. This is fantastic. You put it in fire font there, buddy. I love it. So this it's a really key piece, not only because of what he starts handwriting into it, but also because it has the date on it, right? So we can actually date at what point some of this stuff was entering in. So like 1987 is when Tom Maryland enters into the picture. Just on a personal level, the last entry on that first page is Eleanor. And he actually uses the Tolkien spelling of Eleanor, which is also the spelling that our daughter has. So that makes me very happy. The next thing, the next stage, is he decides to make an outline. And his outline doesn't quite match what we finally get. But what you can see here is the outline for the first book, for Eye of the World. Rhys Althor, still Rhys. Rhys Althor is, he believes, the son of a widowed farmer and sheep herder living outside a small village. Hey, there you go. Sorry, small spoiler alert there. He believes, does he now? You learn that in chapter 4. So yeah, when you come up and can read this, you'll see you can see kind of differences, and you'll see there'll be sections that are all caps. That's him talking to himself. So he would stop in the middle of writing and be like, "What the hell is with that?" And he'll just write that out in the middle of his outline, all caps. Figure out, and then he'll like, yeah, you should figure that out, dude. He wrote in creatively what he called ramblings, and I quote a couple of them in the book that are of particular interest, including one with what's his name? Demandred. That's right. One that he does about Demandred, where he's trying to ramble through. Who is Demandred? Who is this character? It's in the book. In case you're watching at home. I've never had people filming me live. just say, I've given speeches all over the world, and that's new.
Is that why you called me Devandred?
Beware the Forsaken, they shall look just like us. So, the next thing here is another really cool thing. This is what's called the test manuscript. It's labeled test on it. This was his first draft, okay? His complete first draft of the Eye of the World. And he called it the test manuscript. He didn't is this working? I have no idea. So he called it the test manuscript. This is the manuscript that he put together. And what you have is the first draft, and then all the scribbling on this page is his handwriting of him nope, not that word, this word. Nope, that paragraph sucks, this. This is that process of drafting that I was talking about right on the page. This is how he would do it. Print out, write in, print out, write in. That's how he did it. So yeah, that's the first page of chapter 1 of The Eye of the World. The prologue came in later. So that's the first page of the actual draft of the book, which is pretty good. After he got through that, typed it up, cleaned it up, sent that to Tor. Well, first he gave it to Harriet. And Harriet said, this is really good. This is really good. And Harriet is probably the greatest science fiction and fantasy editor ever. If you've ever heard of a book called Ender's Game, little thing. It's one of the greatest ever. She edited that. She's amazing. And so when she was like, this is really freaking good, she then called Tom Doherty, her boss at Tor, and said, look, I don't know if either this is a work of genius or I really love my husband. We'll see. It could be both, right? It could be both. It's possible. And he's like, "Well, send it." And she did. And among the things that happened, I interviewed Tom Doherty at length. Of course, Harriet, Brandon. I've interviewed everybody at length for this. And he was like, "Yeah." From the moment I started reading, I was like, "Yeah, sold, done. Go write the rest of it, Jim." So this next one is his outline for books 2 through 6. So this is his first plan for the entirety of the series. I know what kind of one's going to look like. This is 2 through 6. Unfortunately, I just have the first page here. The last page is underneath. You get to look at the first page. I talk about the last page in there. So that's how I started. It is fascinating. That's the reason I talk about it in the book. So many things do end up staying. He does maintain things all the way through. Some major stuff changes, but it is remarkable. He always kind of knew how it was going to end, and there's proof right there. Now, these next two objects kind of go hand in hand, and what I thought would be fun for you to see is to see kind of how he worked on that kind of daily basis as he's writing. And the first one is a list of songs. So he felt like music, he was very musically inclined, loved singing. I cannot get a straight answer on how good he was, which I find fascinating. I've asked this of numerous people, and some people are like, oh, it was just divine, and other people are like, ask somebody else. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I feel like I got my answer there. He loved music and thought correctly, music is integral to culture. Right? It's hard to separate us from our musical heritage, from our literary heritage, like all that is a part of us. Again, go humanities. So he made lists of song titles. These are song titles that, if his characters are in an inn, well, there's probably somebody singing in the corner. Well, they got to be singing something. So I'll have titles. And so he started making lists of titles. Just like he made lists of names, he made lists of titles. It's like, what are they feeling today? Like what sort of song will it be? Maybe it'll be The Roses of, I think he's got a big old blank, to be filled in the moment, right? Or other ones, he's like the Witherhorn Flower. That just sounds legit. I want to hear that song. So you can see this list of songs that he's got here, including some ones he's handwritten in, which gives you an insight into how he's working. This next one is titled General Notes. I had been told that this was the case when I first got to know Team Jordan. I remember Alan Romanchuk pulling me aside and saying, "You know, he made me go buy beans once." What? Tell me about that. Alan was one of his other key assistants. He said, "Yeah, I had to go buy beans, different kinds of beans, dry beans, so that he could hold the beans and know what they felt like. I know like what the texture would be and the weight of them, and like kind of how they would feel in the hand, because he was going to have a character do this. I wanted to get it right, and if I describe it as this kind of bean, it's the wrong kind of bean. People are going to call me out on that. I got to get the beans right, man." And I was like, "Oh, he did that. Yeah, he did that. Yeah. Oh, he did that." This file is among several that he kept that are just filled with crazy, fantastic facts. Like this one, a man walks at 3 miles per hour or 4 feet per second. Just so that I know that. A horse trots at 7 miles per hour. Rapid rivers flow at 8 miles per hour or 4 feet per second. A horse will travel 400 yards in he's like all this data stream of stuff that he's got, including one that I love personally, which is how far can you see on the horizon before you lose an object? Right? He's like, that's important because my characters, as I'm mapping their progress, I need to know what they can actually see. I might want them to see something, but if you can't see that far, you can't see that far. I'm sorry, Legolas. Or horizon is too far away. Come on now. Tolkien. God love you. Yeah, he's got, these are different blue stones, these are red stones. If we're to go through all the pages on this, there's a page where he has exactly what do all the different kinds of trees that he can think of feel like. What is the texture of that bark? How hard is that wood? So if he describes something, one person is having one kind of wood and another has a different kind of wood, and they hit, which one's going to dent? He had that information to make sure that it would be correct. And I don't know what draws everybody into the Wheel of Time. Lots of things can draw you in. But there is, despite the magic and everything, I think a kind of lived-in quality to the world. And I think a lot of that comes from that he was this, careful about it. And so it doesn't feel out of place. If something happens, it's like, yeah, that's right. That happened correctly. So yeah, I thought that was a cool one to share. And then that one, which I didn't expect. So this one is, there's a book called The White Book. Some people call it the White Book of Very Bad Art, but I never said that, despite I'm on record now saying. The White Book had art in it, and this was a book that had stuff about the legends, the world of Wheel of Time, stuff about its past, which was awesome for us as fans. Oh my gosh, that's that's the backstory of in the Age of Legends of this or that. That's really cool, very exciting stuff. And how was art? Some of the art was a little. Some people say. But it also had a map. It had a map of the world. And there's a map of the Randland world, which is sort of like the I should say Westland world, okay, which is like the map that everybody knows, right? The main continent, part of the main continent. But this was a map of the entirety of Randland, the whole world map. And so it had not only what we know, but it had Shara on it, the Aiel Waste, and it had Shan-Chan on it, and it had Land of Madmen on it. Had all this stuff. The Land of Madmen, by the way, is Australia. So, obviously. I can say that because that's why I asked who was furthest. If somebody was from Australia, see, I would have known and I wouldn't have said that, but my wife's from Canada, so I gotta be careful with her. She knows what I'm talking about. And so,
Never gets old.
Never gets old, does it? Yeah. Love you, babe. This is the map as he was sent it, okay, for inclusion in his book. And when I'm going through the notes, I find this and it says, the Madlands, not, underlined, Land of Madmen. And it says, Also, extend Shanchan a little further north, make southern portion of Shanchan wider by 75%, all such south of equator. That did not happen. This map is exactly the way it was printed in the book that I have in my office. And he didn't, there's then letters where he's writing, pleading, change it. And it never got changed. And so in this book is the new map. It is on, you may have seen it, it was released by Tor. So they did release a little article of it. So this has now the new map. How that happened, really quick, I don't waste everybody's time. So how that happened is we were thinking about doing a new map of that using the artist, Alyssa Mitchell. So that had already kind of been talked about. That like, oh, wouldn't it be neat because that's kind of a simplistic map, let's do kind of a nice one with the artist that everybody knows and loves. Let's do that. It'll be really cool. And then I find this note, I'm like, well, I have to include this information in my book. So I wrote Harriet and said, funny thing happened on the way to the store. I found this. I'm going to talk about it, but just I want you to know, right? Because I'm basically saying that, or I'm going to have to say that at least at some level, what we think is not what he wanted. And the response from Harriet and Team Jordan, and then from Tor was, screw it, let's get the map right. Because that's what Jim said he wanted, make it happen. Now there are other notes that talk about dimensionality of things and stuff like this. We could have gone further with this process, but nothing was as clear as this was. And so this is what Harriet and company wanted. So that's what we did. So that's what we have here. So this is corrected to those directions through the eyes of Alyssa Mitchell. There are some other little changes that have happened that I sort of like made happen, which is a little bit weird. My bad, I screwed up. But trying to correct things, a few other things as well. So these things everybody can come up and look at afterwards in a moment here. I also have Jordan bookmarks here if you want one. You can take one, hand them out to your friends. I don't care. I don't need them.
You can take pictures of them.
You can take pictures of them. Manchester.
Yes.
Do you want this?
Whoa!
I will absolutely say yes to that.
Okay. So I'll give you that. You came the furthest. This is the UK edition. So that's fitting. It's got a little extra bling on it. I like the UK edition. It's pretty cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah. So I'll sign that for you. The rest of you got to come and buy. You still all also have to come and buy a copy. No pressure.
I'll be there tomorrow.
All right. But yes. Does anybody have any questions at all before I let you come? Just don't anybody ask a question. I want to come look at the stuff. Yes, ma'am.
How long was the process from when you started this project to when it went final copy to be printed?
Crazy short. Crazy short. So, I had been doing the research behind this. Okay, well, from the time I signed contract to when it was due was very short. The work I'd been doing went back to, I was like 15. So, like the kind of ideas of where did he get his ideas, his inspirations and stuff from, that's what drew me to the Wheel of Time in the first place. I remember like sitting down with Eye of the World just come out, 15 years old, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I could go to that bookstore today. I don't know if it's still there or not, pandemic hit. Last time I knew it was there. I could go to that bookstore, I could walk in there and I could and I was in that cushy chair, hopefully not that one because it's been a long time, but a cushy chair that was right there. And I pulled it off of that shelf, and I sat down, and I started reading, and I read the first 2 chapters, well, actually, chapter and a half. And absolutely was like, well, there goes all my allowance. It's a new release. I didn't come to buy a new release. What am I doing? Like Mr. Money here. And yeah, bought it on the spot. And I still remember in the prologue, of Eye of the World, hitting Gates of Paradiscent and being like, that's the Gates of Paradise. What's this guy doing? Like, what has just happened? And so I was captivated by it from the beginning. So, I mean, if you've heard me give talks at JordanCon or DragonCon or some con, you know, I've often talked about like this background stuff. So that, all that stuff was in the can. It was just like, well, and they had said they wanted me to write it, and I already kind of like started. You know? Yeah, and then I was like, I'm sure we can work something out, right? You know, and then, so yeah, by the time I finally got contracted, it was like, yeah, this is due real soon. I didn't sleep much for a little bit. Yeah.
What was the most surprising thing you found?
The most surprising thing I found? The most surprising thing I found to me was that piece of paper. Just because I knew that everything on there was, I shouldn't say I knew. I was like 98% sure, like of everything that's on that page, except for the first line. I was like, yeah, of course, right? That's what I thought. And so to be going through, like that was in a loose leaf pile of papers, and to be going through and pull out a piece of paper that was like, holy hell, he wrote it down. Like, are you kidding? This kind of smoking gun aspect of that just was, I remember my heart kind of stopped in the middle of all of it and just sat there and stared, like, what am I holding? Which is the reason that page is in there. It's printed in there. I was like, please let me print. When I got that, and I got the first page of the test manuscript. Yeah, they were amazing about letting me use stuff. But obviously, I mean, there's a reason you can't photograph it. Stuff like, you know, I was like, please let me, and they let me do that because I was like, I gotta share that. It's too cool. So that was the coolest thing. There were other things that like Nakomi, right? Like I knew it was going to be in there. It's a character in the books that it's a big mystery over.
Who's Nakomi?
Who is Nakomi?
Rayfo.
Yeah. So like everybody's been waiting for this for 10 years. People have been waiting for the answer to that question. Who is Nakomi? Because Brandon Sanderson was going to give it up after 10 years. And in that, I had written an entry for it because I knew stuff. And I asked Brandon, I said, what do you want? My book is scheduled to come out before your 10-year mark. Here's what I'm saying. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to cut the entry? What do you want me to do? He'd been so helpful. If he had said kill that entry, I would probably be like, yeah, okay. Or I'll work around somehow, right? Not to give away. And he was like, no, yeah. In fact, here, let me add to it. And so he gave me a few paragraphs that I then quote in it, which was incredibly generous of him to do that. So that was kind of, it's fun to know what that is beforehand. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
You've included a lot of stuff that you research in the book, but is there something that you researched but you couldn't put in the book because you didn't find like a smoking gun?
Yes.
Is there something like that I wish I could ask Robert Jordan like one question and get that answer?
Yes.
Just
yes. I've got. Yes. I'm trying to think how to say when I can't say, and then I could. So there are. I had files and files and files. There's a lot of stuff that I was like, I'm pretty sure, but I don't feel like I'm sure enough to put it in, and so that stuff didn't get in there. That is not what I'd actually want to ask him. There's a couple things where I am 95% sure he is using something from history for this thing, and I don't know what it is. And that frustrates me to no end. I have this short little list of things that I do not have a clue. Now maybe he just totally made them up. Like that's within the realm of possibility. But every corollary thing, of which those things are a part, has a very clear and definitive connection. And those ones, I don't know what it is. And I spent days and days and days just like going insane, trying to figure out, I don't know. And I'm hoping to hell I figured out something. Because some of those, and these aren't huge, like, even, I mean, probably some of you lot be like, oh, I know that thing. But it's like a throwaway line. Just like a throwaway line. Like, but it's connected to something, and so that would bother me. The question that was never answered when he was in his final days, Maria and Alan, everybody was getting recordings and things, trying to get every bit of information out of him, and Maria had a list of questions that every time she saw him, she'd try and check one off while he had energy. And the one the next question to be asked, but didn't get asked because it was the last time she saw him, was how did he light the pipe? Around light the pipe. That was the next question to be asked. I'm so glad it was never answered. I'm so glad. I talk about that in the book a little bit. I kind of hint at it. There's a bunch of stuff I hint at in here. But I'm like, not going to say that directly. We'll see if anybody picks it up. Yeah.
Do you know if there are any secrets left for the 10-year anniversary Sanderson is hosting?
That's a good question.
There's always another secret.
Watch and find out.
I know.
I'll say that.
Why me?
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Have you watched the Amazon Prime show?
Yes.
What do you think of it?
So I am enormously glad that it exists. It's bringing people to the books that wouldn't otherwise be there, and I think the books are great. I think the series is great. Awesome, fantastic. Love the casting. I think they did a fantastic job with the casting. There's some things I'm like, I wouldn't have written it that way, but I can get why they're doing it, so that's not a problem. My biggest thing is do they need to hire like a medieval military historian?
Do you know one?
I know a guy.
With medieval in his Twitter handle?
I know a guy. That's because they were just calling. I'm like, what are you doing? But it's not just them. Look, it's Game of Thrones, right? It's any of these things. I mean, Game of Thrones. Well, I mean, this back that guy's Kelly DeVries back there. If you listen to my podcast, Bone Blade, he's the other guy. I mean, we watched Game of Thrones episodes together when they were coming out, and I remember there was some where we were just like, "Give me the bottle," like, because we're both medieval historians. It's just like, "Oh my God, really? Do they even know how a trebuchet works?" I don't think it's facing the wrong way. I don't know, man. Like, let's just pretend that it didn't happen. I don't know. So it's not just them, but that's the only thing is I'm like I'm right here. Come on now. What other questions? Anybody have? Yes, ma'am.
If was there a section that you could have just expanded on more and just didn't have time or space?
Space, yeah. So it was contracted for a certain length. I jockeyed with things to get as much of all the things I felt like needed to be accomplished for the fans, of which I'm one, so I was just kind of like, what would I want to see in this? Because I couldn't really talk to anybody about it. It's not like I could do a poll like, what would you like to see? They were like, shut up and don't tell anybody. They were very sweet. I'm sorry, I'm not but I tried to sort of like nuance stuff to get in there. So yeah, there's definitely spots like I could have had more. There's 3,000, 4,000 unpublished words of Jordan in here. I would have loved to have more. It's awesome that I got as many in there as I did. I couldn't. There were times when I was like, "Can I use this huge chunk of the first draft of The Eye of the World from the test manuscript? Can I use this whole scene? How about I print the whole thing?" And I'm like, it's one of these things where you ask for something hoping that you're going to get like 10%. Like they'll come back and you can have 250 words. Like, no, it's fine, cool. And they're like, no, you can use the whole thing. Oh, okay. Okay. And then it's like, well, something else is going out of the glossary because I'm getting all that. So yeah, there's definitely lots of stuff that could have been more. Yeah.
Someone on here is wondering what part
Are
of
people asking questions?
Yeah. What are you most excited for people to read in the book? Is there like a section or? Jessica wants to know.
Hi, Jessica.
The lady Jessica.
How you doing, Jessica? You doing all right? Everything okay?
I'm sure she's squeeing right about now. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Didn't know you were there. The thing I'm most excited for people. whatever makes you happy, honestly. Because look, I don't know how to say this stuff. Like it's a book I didn't write for me, right? So whatever it is that makes God, I want you to like that thing. I want you to have that thing. Like that's the thing I want. That sounds cliche or whatever, but like that's just the honest truth. There's nothing, no one thing. I hope you find what you want in it. Like, and if it's like if it makes you cry, hell yeah. If it makes you laugh, hell yeah. You know, if it makes you go, I knew it. Okay, cool. Like just whatever it is. Like that's what I would want. That's all. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Any chance of a volume 2?
Ooh.
That's gonna be my
I mean, there's so much
question.
stuff you couldn't fit in there, so.
That was serial 2 times.
Do we just need to buy more copies? Like,
We've already signed up for it.
So
I think we're all buying two
I
copies.
don't, it's a great question. I don't know.
yeah.
It is so literally above my pay grade. Right? I mean, this is a book that I didn't think would ever exist. I'm still like a little like it's here, and it's a little like no, it's still there. Okay, all right, just keep. It's gonna disappear, right? Because it shouldn't exist. So yeah, I think that's above my pay. I didn't expect this. I would never be wanting to be like, give us a volume 2. Like that's not, look, if I'm asked, hey, will you do a volume 2? Harriet wants a volume. Like, can you do more? Okay. Right? Like, yes, ma'am. But that's above way above my pay grade. And I'm sure the decisions at that point. I mean, some of it is probably going to be how does it do? Like if nobody buys it, then why the hell would we make another one?
No pressure.
We got 15
Yeah,
today.
unless nobody buys it, you see.
We're buying 4 apiece.
There's people watching about like 5 already.
At least 100 here.
Yeah.
I've got one going in my house that's going to sit there for a few days.
Is it the audio version as well?
Oh, hell yeah.
That I had a squee moment with the audio version when they sent me the clip of Rosamund Pike saying my name. I don't know why.
I feel that.
Something about it. I don't know. It's like, and then Michael Livingston. I'm like, let's just listen to that again. Let's go back. Let me just go back. Can I use that as my ringtone? Can I just Michael Livingston? Oh, that's me. Something about that was cool. Yeah, the audio version is pretty cool because there's a little interview from her that's exclusive. She says my name. And of course the main readers did most of the reading. They kind of hate me now. Yeah, it's like very kindly or whatever, but like the pronunciation list because there's like Welsh. There's like all this crazy stuff in here, and they're like, "What are you doing? How do we even pronounce this?" I'm like, "Good luck." It's Welsh to me. Here's some Greek. Have fun. And it's also like when there's spelling changes. How do you do that, right? There's like 5 different spellings of Nynaeve in the book. Like, how do you pronounce them differently to try and help the audio hear? It's just like nightmare fuel, and I'm like, that's a tough problem for you. Whatever. Though I read there's a letter in here from me. I read that, and then I read, there's a long quote from Beowulf, and a long quote from Canterbury Tales and Chaucer, and I just read those. They were like, don't even try to teach us. Just go to the recording studio and record that. And so I did, yeah.
Daniel wants to know if you picked up any writing tips from Jordan while reading all of his notes.
Hi, Daniel. Did I pick any writing, like from my own fiction?
Yeah, like did you learn anything that you'll adopt whenever you're writing?
The main thing I learned there was I felt like more secure. I don't want to make this all about him and Evan, but I wrote some books called Shards of Heaven. And the Shards of Heaven books are like a fantasy behind history. And like, the way I did that, of course, I was like, well, this is what I love about Jordan, right? And so I'm a Jordan freak, so I'm like, oh, I'll just kind of do that, but with our history, like now instead of like in the future, whatever. And so I was trying to, and so seeing the way he worked in our stuff to get in like Easter eggs, I was like, I did that too! Hey! I feel really cool now. So that was the biggest thing, was just feeling like I was like, oh, cool, I kind of did it the same way. He did it better, obviously. And it sold 90 million more. So he's doing all right. Yeah, that was big. That was the big thing. Yeah. What else? Yes, sir.
Sounds like there's a lot of handwritten notes here.
Yeah.
In today's computer age, 50 years from now, there's another Michael Livingston doing a fantasy author, same thing. Are they going to have a lot harder work, would you think?
It's going to be difficult. And actually that does change a little bit for him. He starts typing everything. Now, fortunately, so say unlike myself, see, I rewrite my files. When I don't have old, I guess I have a couple things.
So you're just writing right over it.
I just write over everything. He didn't do that. He would save version copies, which is tremendous for me. And not something because like, what, am I going to like be saving my old files because I think I'm going to be famous one day? Like, what the hell? Like, that's not happening. So like, not even remote. But thank God he did do that, right? So that we can see that. Now that's not a downside. But the thing that is difficult, and I wrote an article for Tor, I don't know what it was, a few weeks ago, on Life's All, I don't know what day it is. As my students will tell you. I talked about going and using the archives. And then one of the things you have to be very careful of is because of the way he did his files, it can be hard to know where you are. And so you'll find a piece of information and be like, look, I have this thing or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's from 3 years off of when you think. Because of the way that he wrote and labeled his files. And they're not even, the way the label can look isn't actually when it's crazy. So even though we do have all the material, it's you have to be very cautious about what you're concluding from it. Just like the first thing I had to do was build this huge spreadsheet of like, when do I think all this stuff, what order is it, to try and make sense of all that. So that when I'm talking about X piece of paper or Y piece of paper, I know where it is in the scheme of things. So that I'm getting all the pieces correct to tell the story of how he did this. So it's great that it's all there, but man, you kind of need a guide to get through it. So I'm like hoping that kind of does that a little bit. Yeah. I'm hoping someday I can get to where I'm comfortable enough to share the spreadsheet with everybody. like not with everybody, but like to give it to them at least at CFC and be like, look, here's the skeleton key. And of course they're like, yeah, whatever you want to do. They're really cool. Really cool. Anything else? I'll take everybody's evening. Yes, sir.
Any interesting personal theories you had before you dug into the notes that you were either vindicated about or maybe incorrect about?
The most interesting one that I was totally incorrect about is not interesting to anybody. But interesting to me, and you may have heard me tell this story if you've watched any of my podcast interviews or whatever. If they've come, I don't know which ones have come out. I've been like 2 interviews a day in the past weeks. I don't know, but I know I've talked about it some. I wrote an entry because I knew what the answer was for Zemai, spelled Z-E-M-A-I, which is maize, corn, right? What you make whiskey from. Go team. And so I knew, like he reordered the letters, right? It's maize, and took the Z at the end and stuck it in the front. Ta-da! And so I knew that. So I wrote the article. I wrote that entry. That's what it is. The book goes through Harriet, goes to Maria, goes to Tor, goes to the Maria, goes through Maria, goes through Maria. I've gone through it. Like everybody's like, yeah, that's what it is. And it bothered me so much because that is not how he did anything else. That is not how anything else works. I've had people come to me through the years, I've had this theory, that such and such is reordered, scrambled. Like, that's not how he does anything, except for that. That's how he did it, so okay. And then I get an email from Maria. I came from Maria. I was getting ready to leave work. I remember this. And I get bing, an email from Maria. I'm like, well, not leaving yet. Read the email from Maria. And it says, hey, I was just watching Jeopardy. Okay. And she says, Ken Jennings was hosting, which is interesting if you don't know. Ken Jennings and Brandon Sanderson were roommates in college. And so she says, Ken Jennings was hosting, and the question came up about the scientific name of maize. And the scientific name for maize is Z maize. She's like, I think that's where he got that. I'm like, yeah, it's exactly where he got that from. Oh my God. So he took the scientific name and screwed around with it so that it would look like it was the scramble of maize. And he probably thought it was hilarious. Right? Because he thought idiots like me would think that it was just a rescramble. He's like, no, that's actually the scientific name, sucker. Like, it was great. And so I had to go change it. I'm like, are you kidding? Oh, Maria. How would the dumb luck that she was watching Jeopardy and it happened to be Ken Jennings and she had just read it. So it was fresh in her mind, so that it kind of clicked. Wow. I'm like, oh my God, like, well, the wheel weaves, hey, don't question it. So I had to go back and change that entry. And I loved it then because the last footnote is explaining that. And so the last footnote was talking about Maria and that event. So that's the thing that shocked me the most, just because I was all the way like, we were like getting ready to go to print. Go to print. Oh no, change that. Yeah. Which I know it's like a dinky thing, but cool. Anything else? Yes.
Is there a particular historical or cultural reference that's like your favorite that he did?
My favorite historical or cultural reference? Yes.
Do I have to read the book to find out?
Okay. So if my favorite one that he did is not my favorite one in the books. Okay, my favorite one in the books is The Last Battle. And if you read, you'll find out why. Read Harriet's forward, and you'll find out why. As far as stuff that he put in there, my favorite of them, I don't know. The Battle of Malden is cool to me because it has nothing to do with the Battle of Malden, which is a very famous medieval battle. And he uses the name, but then he uses like tactics from Crecy, and he used, which I've written about a few times, and he does some and so I just think that's awesome. That's my medieval military geekery. Not everybody's weird like me. But if you are, listen to our Bow and Blade podcast. No. What else? Yes.
Josh with the Black Tower podcast wants to know if you learned anything fun about the Black Tower in the notes.
Yes, but that's not in the book.
Can you share? Volume 2?
Remember, the book is outworld, not inworld. So the only reason you get some in-world giveaways like Nakomi is because it relates to how he was writing. So that's the reason you have that information. So that there may be other things that I may or may not know that are in-world within the Wheel of Time. That this would not be the book for that.
That sounds like a great Volume 2 subject.
Yeah.
In-world.
In-world stuff. You have the companion. That's what that is. And I'm not sure why it would make sense to do a companion to. I don't know. Above my pay grade. Above my pay grade. Great question. Anything else? Before y'all come on back, you don't want to come look at these. Yeah.
What's your favorite battle in the books?
My favorite battle in the books?
Yeah.
The last battle? Yeah. No, he did battles really well, and so I kind of like all of them. Tarwin's Gap was awesome.
Like picking your favorite child.
It's like picking my favorite child, but I have one, so. No, that's good. I love them all for different reasons.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Favorite great captain?
Favorite great captain? Ooh. El Cid. Read the book and find out why. Find out who the hell that is. You're like, that's not a character. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Yeah, from the Citadel. El Cid was a Spanish hero in the Middle Ages, and he did used El Cid in the series. So he's cool. Yeah. All right. Anything else? So yeah, I know where we go. So I'll be hanging around here if you have questions going on through this. Please, again, no photos. No photos. Don't be bad. Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you.
It's over now. Thanks for watching, and be on the lookout for more stuff soon. Okay. Bye.